What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Draft Hub. And today we're going to be going through my predictions for the college football playoffs. Now, before we get into this, I'm going to say that I think that the committee absolutely got this right. Now, I'm not a hater of Notre Dame by any way, shape, or form, but kind of glad that they didn't get in. And people saying that group of five teams don't deserve to make the playoffs, that they shouldn't be in a 12-team playoff. Let me ask you this. What sense does that make? Because then at the end of the day, what are these group of five teams playing for if there's not even a long shot of them making the playoffs? I love the fact that Tulane and James Madison made it. I think especially James Madison honestly deserve a shot in this college football playoff. I mean, Tulane as well, but James Madison for sure deserve a spot in this one. They've been fantastic all year long. So why not? Where you have a Notre Dame who their resume is really nothing at the end of the day. I mean, I think that they were falsely ranked anyway the entire season. I think that they were massively overhyped. And just because they made the championship game last year, completely different roster for the most part. I think that they made the right choice. So I'm happy with that. Before we get into the predictions, please, if you are new here, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any great draft content, NFL content, college football content. I've been diving a little bit more into the college football content as of late, and I got to say, I'm having an absolute ton of fun with that kind of stuff. I'm going to be in the next couple of weeks, hopefully getting out a couple more transfer portal videos because those are always really fun to do as well. So if you're interested in anything like that, please subscribe. So we're going to look at the first round here. So we have number 12, James Madison versus number 5, Oregon. You have number 11, Tulane versus number 6, Ole Miss. You have number 7, Texas A&M against number 10, Miami. And number 8, I think it's 8 is Oklahoma against number 9, Alabama. So yes, this is what the first round looks like. Texas Tech, Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia all got first round buys. Very, very deserving. Now, I know that some of these logos aren't the actual logos. That's the old JMU logo. I absolutely love that logo. And that Oregon logo is so cool, in my opinion. But we're going to go from the top left down to the bottom right here. We're going to start with number 12, James Madison, taking on Oregon. And no disrespect to the Dukes here. Number 12, JMU versus number 5, Oregon. You have a Sun Belt title winner against a Big Ten title hopeful. This is going to be a tough one, and unfortunately, I think the matchup isn't really going to bode well for the people like myself that say, oh, why can't group of five teams make the playoffs? Just for the sheer potential of an upset of this magnitude alone, it should be completely reasonable for a group of five team to make it in. But I do think I would love to say this more diplomatically, but I can't really think of the words right now. I'm thinking that this is going to be the biggest blowout or the first round. I just think Oregon's offense, after having a tad bit of a struggle period there in like the middle part of the season, have definitely found their stride. Dante Moore is back at his best. The offense is clicking. That connection that he has with Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, I think they'll be able to exploit the middle of the field tenfold against this James Madison defense. And this is a James Madison defense that was number 1 against the pass and number 1 against the rush in the Sun Belt. But respectfully, they haven't faced an offense like Oregon really ever, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, I do think Oregon get this one done, and they do move on to the quarterfinals. Then we have Alabama and Oklahoma, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not seeing a lot of love for Oklahoma. I've looked at a bunch of different, experts, quote unquote, who predicted all these games already, and I don't think I saw one person pick the Sooners in this one. I tend to disagree. I do think that the SEC championship game against Georgia was a little bit telling for Alabama in two folds. One is that Ty Simpson, his play has certainly declined over probably the last 6 or so games of the season. And that the weapons at Alabama really aren't nearly as good as they once were. I think Ryan Williams is a very overrated wide receiver. Jeremy Bernard is good, but I don't think he's a wide receiver that you rely on to take over against the defense. Same thing with Isaiah Horton. Josh Cuevas as well. I mean, this offense, they have good weapons, but not great weapons. And this Oklahoma defense is elite. They rank in the top 10 in basically every single category. They're third in the country in sacks. And this is a Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line that is good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you got guys in you got R. Mason Thomas, you got Grayson Halton. You have very, very skilled pass rush oriented type of players on this defensive line. And I do think that they're going to be able to get to Ty Simpson. He is a quarterback that relatively does well under pressure, but this Oklahoma defense is going to be tough. I think this is going to be one of the lowest scoring games of the entire playoffs because I think both defenses are good enough to hold each offense. But at the end of the day, I do think that Oklahoma's skill position players are going to be able to get a little bit more of a one up on Alabama. And Alabama was kind of a question mark. They were at the mercy of the committee going into this selection weekend here. So I don't think that they got away with one. I think they relatively do deserve it. Maybe a team like Vanderbilt would deserve it, in my opinion, maybe a little bit more than Alabama. That's just me, especially since Vanderbilt beat Alabama as well. But at the end of the day, I do think that Oklahoma actually beat this one. I'm going to say this is going to be a close one. This is going to be like a 17-14 or a 17-10 or one of those 14-10, something like that. Both defenses are both very, very good. I think at the end of the day, Oklahoma's pass rush is going to get to Ty Simpson at one point. They're going to be able to shut down the run. I mean, this Alabama rush attack really hasn't ever been great this season. So I don't really think they even have to worry about that. And on the back end in the secondary, I think that Oklahoma has more than enough talent to deal with the wide receivers for Alabama. So give me Oklahoma over Alabama to move on to the quarterfinals in this one. Then going over to Tulane and Ole Miss, and I tell you, this is going to be a fun one. I think both offenses can basically score at will. You have Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss leading the way. I think this Ole Miss team is going to surprise a lot of people in this playoffs. I feel like they've been doubted really the entire season, myself included. This was an Ole Miss team that I just didn't really see the talent. Once Jackson Dart and all the players left for the NFL draft, I really thought to myself they're going to have to go through a little bit of a transitional period to get back to greatness, and that just certainly wasn't the case. You got two teams now here with Tulane and John Summerall, who is moving on to Florida. You have Lane Kiffin, who's moving on to LSU. These are two teams that are they might be playing with a chip on their shoulder here. The coaches are leaving, or the coaches left, or they've already agreed to other teams. They're going to go coach other teams. I think their players are going to want to kind of go out with a bang and kind of prove a lot of people wrong. So I think this Tulane team is going to come out firing. This Tulane team is good. I don't think there's any denying that. But this Ole Miss team is tough. On the defensive side, they have plenty of players that make impact plays. On the offensive side, I mean, Deshaun Stribling is a fantastic wide receiver. Like I mentioned, Trinidad Chambliss being one of the best stories in the FBS this season after coming up from Division II Ferris State and really lighting Ole Miss on fire this season. This is this is a tough one here. I do think Ole Miss do get the victory over Tulane, but unlike the other side of the bracket with JMU and Oregon, where that's a group of 5 team, I think Tulane is probably the best representation of the group of 5 this year. And I think that Ole Miss, obviously because they're just so much more high powered than Tulane, I think that they do get the job done over Tulane. So give me Ole Miss to go over Tulane into the quarterfinals. Then you have my Texas A&M Aggies against the Miami Hurricane. And this is a team that I think doesn't really match up with A&M very well. The reason being is because every time we see that A&M line up against a team that has a good offensive line, it is very difficult for those pass rushers to get to the quarterback. And Carson Beck, say what you will about him, but he is a quarterback that if you give him time, he will find his open receiver and he will pick you apart. And Malachi Toney is a player that I worry about quite a bit against this Texas A&M defense. So that's something to definitely key in on. So I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for A&M to move Cassius Howell all around the defense to try and get him away from Francis Mauigoa to, make sure that he kind of doesn't line up against the best offensive lineman that Miami have, because we saw it against Texas where Trevor Gooseby was lined up against Cassius Howell for most of the time, and he basically made him a non-factor. On the Miami Hurricane side, this is an elite defensive unit, and this is a really good offensive unit too. I think it's going to be difficult for Texas A&M to kind of score at will like they're used to this season. They're kind of, Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver are, a really, really solid 1-2 punch for this Texas A&M team. I think it's going to be difficult for Miami to keep up with them. Kind of the same thing with the other side with A&M and CJ Daniels and Malachi Toney. It's going to be tough. I think this is going to be a fireworks-filled game. This is a game that has two really good defenses and two really good offenses. At the end of the day, I do think A&M are going to be able to squeeze it out. I'm thinking like a 30-27 type of game, something like that, maybe even in overtime. I think this is going to be the toughest game to call in the first round. I think a lot of people think that Alabama and Oklahoma is the toughest game. I think it's A&M and M and Miami because they match up very well against each other, and I think this is going to be a fireworks filled game. But give me the Aggies over Miami in this first round here. Now we're going to move on to our quarterfinal matchup. So these are big bowl games. So obviously we're going to go one by one. So you have number 5 Oregon taking on number 4 Texas Tech in the Capital One Orange Bowl. Now this, you want to talk about a fireworks filled game. This could be it, but at the same time, you also have this Texas Tech team that has one of the most elite defensive units in the entire nation. So if Oregon is able to clamp down on Texas Tech's elite offense, then you still have that elite pass rush and that elite defensive line that Texas Tech could lean on. And not to mention their secondary is really good too. I mean, when you have a defensive line comprised of David Bailey, Romello Height, Lee Hunter, and Skylar Gill Howard, I mean, that is just an elite front four. I think it's going to be, even though Oregon's offensive line is very, very good. You know, you have players like Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon. You know, you have really, really good offensive line players for Oregon as well. I think over the course of the game, let's not forget Jacob Rodriguez too. So if you get that 5 matched up against the 5 of Oregon, I do think over the course of a game, Texas Tech beats down on that offensive line with that 5 guys, because Jacob Rodriguez is really the X factor for me for this defense. He is the guy that's going to blow sideline to sideline. He's going to be able to blitz. He's going to be able to cover. He's going to be able to, diagnose plays before they even happen. He's an uber talented linebacker, and I think he kind of takes this defense over the edge against this Oregon team. So I do think this is going to be a tightly contested game, because you also have Baron Morton, who is good, but he's susceptible to his turnovers as well. And this Oregon Ducks defense could definitely force turnovers. So, I would look for Texas Tech to kind of run the ball as much as they can, try and force the ball down the throats of the Oregon Ducks defensive line, and then see where that gets them. Kind of like you pass off the run instead of run off the pass. So a lot of play action, a lot of motion, try and get this Oregon Ducks defense moving. But at the end of the day, I do think Texas Tech have more than enough talent to get the job done over Oregon. So give me number 4 Texas Tech to move on to the semifinals over the Oregon Ducks. Moving on, you have the Rose Bowl now, and you have the Rose Bowl for Indiana and Oklahoma. And I feel like Indiana is going to play some boring games in the college football playoff purely because their defense is just so dang good. I mean, you have players on all levels of the defense for them that make such an impact. You have Mikhail Kamara off the edge. You have Aiden Fisher in the middle. You have D'Angelo Pons at corner. I mean, they have some great players up and down the defense. And this is another closely contested defensive battle because, again, same deal for Oklahoma, as I mentioned before, will go with in the Rose Bowl here. I mean, this is a team, John Mateer is a very good quarterback. The offense kind of struggled down the stretch there, and it's not due to lack of skill position players. You still have Deion Burke. You have Isaiah Satania, who I think is a really good player as well. It's not due to lack of skill position players. It's just, I don't know, John Mateer kind of, ever since, he rushed back to play against Texas, I feel like he hasn't been the same quarterback. I think that injury has really been bugging him all season. Then on Indiana's side, I mean, what a showing in the Big Ten championship game. You had, Fernando Mendoza basically cashing in on his Heisman win in that game, even though he only threw for 255 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But the defense held so strong. That's the thing for me. So when you have an offense that you have a running back like Roman Hemby, you have an offensive line as good as Indiana does. You have Fernando Mendoza, you have Omar Cooper, you have Elijah Surratt. You have a really, really strong offensive unit to go along with an elite defensive unit. I think this is going to be a little bit too much for this Oklahoma defense to handle, just because of the fact that I think Indiana's offensive line is well equipped to deal with Oklahoma's pass rush. Like I mentioned Carter Smith. Pat Coogan is another transfer that came in that has played very, very well for Indiana this year. So This is going to be another defensive battle. I'm thinking another 20 to 13, 17-13 type of game, but I think Indiana do get it done at the end of the day over Oklahoma, and I have number 1 Indiana moving on to the semifinals here in this one. Then you have the All-State Sugar Bowl here between Ole Miss and Georgia. So my thing here is this was one of the best matchups in the SEC this past year. On my birthday, October 18th, Ole Miss and Georgia played to a 43 to 35 game where here's the thing for me. So I'll be straightforward with you guys. I'm picking Ole Miss in this one. And the reason being for that is I do think at some point this Georgia Bulldogs team is going to get exposed. And I think Ole Miss's offense is firing on all cylinders at the right time. You do forget that in the first meeting between these two teams, Georgia was running the ball at, a fantastic rate. I feel like the last few weeks or month or 5 weeks of the season, they really let Gunnar Stockton kind of win the game with his arm for the most part. In this game here, if you remember, Gunnar Stockton had 4 total touchdowns. I believe 3 of them were rushing. This Ole Miss defensive front was really bad against the run about the first 6 weeks of the season, and they have really, really clamped it down over the back end of the season. Now, I think Georgia's offense kind of ran through Alabama at will for the most part in the SEC championship game. I think Ole Miss know exactly what they have to do. I think this is going to be a game where Ole Miss know that they have to score on basically every single possession because this Georgia Bulldogs defense has certainly clamped down in over the past month or so. I mean, what was it? The last 3 regular season games, they allowed 22 points in 3 games, and 2 of those 3 games were against ranked opponents. They just let Alabama have 7 points here. But this Ole Miss team, I think this offense is firing on all cylinders at the right time. This defense knows that they have to clamp down. They've done a much better job against the run. I think the pass defense is more than capable of containing Zachariah Branch and containing, Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp and those types of guys. I think this is going to be another high scoring affair for the most part, but I think Ole Miss get it done at the end of the day. I really do believe in this Ole Miss team. And Georgia, I know I could, we could turn around and Georgia could wind up mollywopping this Ole Miss team, like freaking 42 to 14, and I look like an ass. But I really do believe in this Ole Miss team. I believe in Trinidad Chambliss. He is a winner. This is where he knows. I know that was Division Two, but he knows how to get to this stage and he knows how to win. So I think Chambliss is going to rise the occasion and he's going to upset the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl, and Ole Miss is going to go to the semifinals. All right, now that I'm in the midst of doing this video, recording this live right now, I forgot that when I made these slides, I actually picked Miami over Texas A&M. So go back to what I said about Texas A&M and Miami. So just flip that, I guess, for the most part, and give me Miami. But I did say that these two teams are very evenly matched, so it could go either way. So I guess I had Miami going on to the Goodyear Cotton Bowl over Ohio State. So I apologize for the little misunderstanding there, but I made this slideshow last night and I'm recording this in the morning. So I guess after a good night's sleep, I forgot that I picked Miami over my Texas A&M Aggies. So you have Miami taking on Ohio State here in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. And yeah, this will be tough. This will be tough for Miami because where I feel like Texas A&M is kind of lacking spacing wise for their defense, I feel like Ohio State is not. I mean, this Ohio State defense was generational this year for the Buckeyes. I mean, what did they allow? Like 9.58 points per game or something like that. It was something super, super low. And they match up very well. I mean, you have on the outside, you have Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews Jr., who's going to take care of CJ Daniels and Malachi Toney. Not only that, you have safety help over the top with Caleb Downs. In the middle of the field, you have Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. And then, of course, the defensive line is unbelievable. Caden Curry, Caden McDonald. You have some unbelievable players all over, up and down this defense. Kenyatta Jackson Jr. as well. I think this is going to be very, very difficult sledding for Miami and for Carson Beck. I think this Ohio State Buckeyes defense is really going to suffocate this Miami team. I think they're going to make them very one-dimensional. I think they're really going to clamp down on the run game here with Mark Fletcher. And I think that they're going to make Miami's offense one-dimensional. And then on the flip side, I don't think that Miami possess the corners that are going to be able to deal with a Carnell Tate and a Jeremiah Smith. I think it's going to be very difficult for them. And then in the middle of the field, you have Max Clare as well. So it's, kind of whichever way you look for this Miami defense, it's going to be very tough for them to match up all over the field with this Ohio State offense. Very few teams in the country can match up across the board with Ohio State, Indiana being one of them. But I think Julian Sayin is going to, he's going to do what he's been doing basically all season. He hasn't been turning the ball over really at all. He's just been kind of protecting the football, being like, I don't want to call him a game manager, but when you have all the talent that Ohio State do have, it's kind of tough not to call someone a game manager because all you have to do is just not put the ball in harm's way, and you're probably 95% of the time going to win the game. So I think as long as Julian Sayin can keep doing what he's doing, Ohio State limit the turnovers in their own territory, I don't really think there's a way for Miami to win this game. So give me Ohio State over Miami to advance to the semifinal. And either way, to be honest with you, if this was Miami or Texas A&M, whichever I picked, I was going to pick Ohio State anyway. So the buck ends here. The buck stops here for either team. But give me the Buckeyes to move on to the semis. And then you have the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl here as the semifinal between Texas Tech and Indiana. And I will be honest with you guys, I do think Texas Tech pose a huge threat to Indiana. I really do think that they do. But at the end of the day, I do think this Indiana defense is going to be able to kind of clamp down on this Texas Tech offense. I do think this is going to be a very tightly contested game. This is going to be where we're going to see the Texas Tech defense shine through more than the offense. I do think this Indiana, just the Indiana's defense, I think, is just going to be able to suffocate Baron Morton. They're going to be able to, clamp down on a Caleb Douglas on the outside. I think it's going to be difficult sledding for both offenses, really. I think this is going to be one of the toughest tests for Fernando Mendoza as well. But I do think the secondary for Texas Tech is a little weaker than Indiana's secondary. And I think when you have wide receivers that are playing as well as Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, I think it's going to be very difficult for Texas Tech to stop those offensive players because Fernando Mendoza deals with pressure well. He's going to be able to climb the pocket. He's going to be able to find someone down the field. And I think it's going to be those types of moments that are going to make this very difficult for the Red Raiders. And in another closely contested game, give me the Indiana Hoosiers to go on to the college football championship game. And they beat the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the semis. And then the other semifinal, you have Ole Miss and Ohio State. And once again, as I mentioned before, I do believe in this Ole Miss team, but I don't think that they have the offensive firepower that's going to be able to intimidate this Ohio State defense. I do think that this is going to be a very difficult game for Ohio State to really score any points on here. I don't think stylistically and personnel-wise, I don't think that Ole Miss match up against Ohio State very well at all. And I think this is going to be one of those games where you kind of think to yourself, well, the wily veteran that's here every single year against, the upset, good story in Ole Miss that make it all the way to the semis. And then they kind of get, the beat pretty bad for the most part. This seems like one of those games that it's going to be. What was the game last year? Was it Oregon and Ohio State? I don't remember what game it was. I think that's what the game was, but Ohio State got out to like a commanding lead, and Oregon was never able to come back. And I think that's exactly what we're going to be looking at here in this one as well. So give me Ohio State over Ole Miss. And then Ole Miss kind of are going to be in a little bit of a transitional period there for a little while, going from Lane Kiffin to Pete Golding. It's going to be interesting to see how that transition works with Pete Golding handling the media and all that kind of stuff. But yes, give me the Buckeyes to. Might sound boring, but it's going to be a rematch of the Big Ten National Championship game. And I will say, I do think this is going to be a little bit different second way around. I think both offenses can game plan for the defenses this time around. I think we're going to see a lot more scoring than 13-10 in this one here. But what I think is that I think this is where Ohio State are able to really use that combination of Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. I mean, we saw it in the Big Ten National Championship game. Jeremiah Smith had 8 catches for 144 yards. It's not like he wasn't able to get going. He just couldn't score. So that's the thing that I think is going to be different about this game here. I think Ohio State know what they have to do. They know what they did wrong this past weekend against Indiana. And as much as I'd love to see Curt Cignetti and Indiana beat Ohio State for the national championship game, I just can't see a team as talented as Ohio State and as well coached as Ohio State with a Ryan Day, with a Matt Patricia. Um, I guess Brian Hartline is still there, right? Agreed to become the coach of South Florida, but I think that he is still able to coach for Ohio State with a team as well coached across the board as Ohio State. I can't see them losing to Indiana again, especially after scoring 10 points. But being able to, I mean, Julian Sayin had over 280 passing yards. The wide receiver duo did well. The defense did really well. So, what Indiana did, in my opinion, really well was that they didn't run any plays in the direction of Arvell Reese for the most part. It was very seldom that you saw them run direct in the direction of Arvell Reese. I think that's a really good way to kind of combat this defensive unit for Ohio State. If you're able to kind of maneuver your way around this linebacking core, I think you're going to be in good shape. I don't think they're going to be able to do it again for two straight games. So give me Ohio State as your 2025-26 national champions. They go back to back. They beat Notre Dame last year. They're going to beat Indiana this year in a rematch of the Big Ten national championship game. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There are my predictions for the 2025-26 college football playoffs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.